Well, a very pleasant good morning to members of the Small Business Association of Barbados, to our colleagues, our partners and friends here in Barbados, and wherever you may be joining us from at this time. I am Dr. Lynette Holder, Chief Executive Officer of the Small Business Association of Barbados, and it is my pleasure to have you on our call today for this month's webinar. And for those of you who may not know, each month, the SBA organizes an information session for our members and our partners, addressing a topic of interest, an area that we believe is pertinent to the management of your firm, that will assist with capacity building, to understand current affairs issues, and overall to help in this journey of building a much better and stronger enterprise. And today is no exception. For this month, the month of October, our focus is on what is an approved small business, a discussion around the regulatory framework for our small firms here in Barbados. And I'm very, very excited about today's session for the simple reason that for some time now, those who have been following the programming of the SBA will recall that we have been sharing with you information on the approved small business regime and encouraging that our members, our member firms, consider this as a next step in the development of the enterprise. Some months ago, a part of our research programming, the SBA conducted an exploratory survey. And in that survey, only 11% of those polled confirmed that there actually were approved small businesses. Not a number that we are really proud of, not 11%. But what we felt was a motivation to us out of that survey was that 80% of those polled confirmed that they would like to become approved small businesses. So 80% said to us that they want to have more information about this regime so that they can become approved small businesses. So that told us immediately that the interest is overwhelming in not only understanding what this framework is all about, but for those businesses to want to become an approved small business. And so we felt that today, in this month of October, would be an ideal time for us to add this to our programming, add this to our agenda. And so we have the team from the Ministry of Energy and Business, led by the permanent secretary in that ministry, on the call with us today to help us distill this topic, help us to discuss this issue of being an approved small business. And many of you also will reflect on the fact that some months ago, the Minister of Finance and Economic Affairs did announce that a preferential tax rate of 5.5% on the taxable income would be established for those registered as approved small businesses. So that meant that in addition to the incentives in the Small Business Development Act, that persons who are indeed registered as approved small businesses will now pay 5.5% on their taxable income. And if you wanted an incentive, colleagues, there you have it. And you'll appreciate why it is so important for us today to have a discussion on this topic. Again, for those who may be new on the call, at the end of our session, we will invite you to stay on for 5 extra minutes and complete a very short evaluation survey for us. This is important because it helps in our planning. It helps us to gather feedback from you on the session so we can determine what we need to do as we continue to improve on our programming in the future. So please stay on the call for that extra 5 minutes and just answer a few very short questions for us on today's session. So without any further ado, colleagues, let's get right into it. And remember that our session is recorded. All of our webinars are posted on the Small Business Association's YouTube channel, as well as our website in the SBA TV segment of the website. So if you miss any aspect of today's session, fear not. No need to be afraid, no need to be concerned. You can go on our channels after the session, and you can watch the entire webinar again. And please, as we go through our session today, jot your questions down, write your notes down, because our permanent secretary is going to engage you in a question and answer segment after the PowerPoint presentation. So please jot your notes down and keep them handy. We will use the chat feature on this Zoom platform. Okay, so please write your questions down. And when we get to that segment on our webinar today, we will refer to the chat segment on the program. Your mics are to remain muted, and if you want, you can turn your cameras on. That's up to you, but your mics will remain muted, and we will engage via the chat feature on this platform in our question and answer segment today. So the permanent secretary, as I said, is here. You're wondering, well, who is he? Let me share a little bit about our PS this morning. Mr. Kevin Hunte has been an attorney at law for the past 24 years. He was in private practice for 10 of those years, with an emphasis on conveyancing, estates, and personal injuries. Now, he joined the team at the Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property Office in 2009 and was intimately involved in the structuring of the online filing system at KIPO, particularly from an administrative and legislative point of view. He, together with the staff at KIPO, worked assiduously to improve the level of customer service and business facilitation at the company's division of KIPO. Now, in May 2016, Mr. Hunte assumed the role of Deputy Registrar acting at the Supreme Court Registry of Barbados. He was assigned responsibility for the Court of Appeal and the Caribbean Court of Justice Registries. On August 15, 2017, he was promoted to the position of Director of International Business within the Ministry of International Business. And since coming to the International Business Unit, Mr. Hunte has been heavily involved in traversing the BEPS. This is the BEPS Action 5 program there and the attendant consequences, the matter of the European Union and its blacklisting process, and the reshaping and repositioning of the International Business Unit in order for it to be more relevant, more effective, and more adept to manage all that is required in this rapidly changing environment. And he is presently acting as permanent secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Business. So from that very short bio sketch, colleagues, you will agree with me that RPS is very, very competent, especially in business process re-engineering. And I'm sure that he would bring some of this experience to bear as we discuss the issue of applying for approved small business status and helping our MSME sector to ensure that they are compliant with the legislation. So without any further ado, let's turn our attention to our permanent secretary in the Ministry of Energy and Business and invite him at this time to lead our conversation today as we discuss what is an approved small business. PS, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holder, and good morning to yourself and good morning to the others on line, both of the SBA office and your members. It is good to see so many of you logged on this morning. And before I go any further, I just want to make sure that you're hearing me clearly?
Yes, we are hearing
Yes, we are
you.
hearing you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holder. So let me get right into it. Dr. Holder and myself and Minister Cummings, we would have had some conversations. And in those conversations, from Minister Cummings' perspective and my perspective, we had to agree that we need to close the gap, being very open with you, that exists between the Ministry of Energy and Business, particularly through the Small Business Development Unit and the wider ministry, and this MSME sector. The small businesses, micro businesses are extremely important to Barbados, extremely important to our society. In many instances, they are the bedrock of our communities and are very instrumental in our families. In many instances, single parent families being able to not only survive, but to provide for their children and also contribute significantly to the Barbadian economy and society development. So on that basis, we have agreed that we want to work closer, especially with a number of initiatives coming on stream, and be able to help be of a benefit to our small business association and our small business sector. That having been said, let me also extend apologies for the absence of Minister Cummings. She was going to be here as a surprise guest, but Minister Cummings traveled on the weekend, and so she is overseas attending a conference at the moment. We'll be back this coming Saturday, but she sends her greetings and indeed echoes the sentiments that I would have just shared. In her introduction, her kind introduction, Dr. Holder would have referred to the 5.5% tax rate, that she called it a preferential regime. But it is not really a preferential regime, even though I understand why it is phrased that way. We can best look at it as a regime to help incentivize the sector, and one that we were allowed to have a carve out in our domestic corporate tax structure. So let me explain what that is about. You would have recalled that when the present government came into power shortly in 2018 into 2019, there was a repeal of about 15 pieces of legislation and an amendment made to our corporate tax structure, whereby we were then known as a low or nominal tax jurisdiction, where our tax rate, depending on your bracket of income, would have ranged from 5.5% down to 1%. And in some cases, when you would have received certain concessions, you would have even ended up at 0.75%. That is within the BEPS framework, as Dr. Holder said, and BEPS, B-E-P-S, stands for Base Erosion and Profit Shifting. And that comes out of an initiative of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, otherwise known as the OECD, headquartered in Paris. What has happened is that there is a global agreement concerning what is known as multinational corporations, very, very large corporations who use other jurisdictions to shift their profits, thereby reducing the amount of tax that they're liable to pay in their jurisdiction of origin or their home jurisdiction. So to break that down, if they are headquartered in, say, Paris, or headquartered in Geneva, or headquartered in London, or headquartered in Brussels, they will look for jurisdictions such as ours, maybe the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and other jurisdictions that have lower corporate tax rates, and use the extended registration in those jurisdictions to pay tax in those jurisdictions and not necessarily pay tax in their jurisdiction of origin. And so you can imagine that that has come with it, brought with it a number of complications. But suffice it to say, the international community has agreed to tax these corporations wherever they're located at 15% once they are above a certain threshold. That threshold would not impact our small and micro enterprises. But what that meant, that also meant, along with other initiatives, that Barbados needed to consider very carefully whether we wanted to remain known as a nominal or low tax jurisdiction. And so other jurisdictions that were in that bracket Some of you may have heard of economic substance requirements and filings, that those requirements and filings came from being in that bracket. And some other jurisdictions then, notably the UAE, took the decision to propose to the OECD a tax rate that could not be considered as low or nominal once it was accepted, not by the OECD organization proper, but by the member states. And so there are over 156 member states. And how the OECD operates is that it operates on a basis of consensus -1, meaning that everybody else has to agree except the country to whom the matter relates. That country does not vote, but everybody else votes. And so it was left up to the member states to determine then what will be a corporate tax rate that will move a jurisdiction from being considered as a low or nominal tax jurisdiction. And the UAE would have tested that last year, and they would have proposed 9%, and that was accepted. And so Barbados followed suit because we did not want to go back where we were before years prior, where our corporate tax rate was at 20%, 22%, 25%. Those tax rates obviously would be quite prohibitive and challenging, especially to our MSME sector. And so we followed UAE and we proposed 9%. But then we also still wanted to incentivize this MSME sector. And therefore, we were allowed to have an incentive carve out, especially seeing as how the MSME sector does not fall within that international multinational bracket. And thereby, we went back to the higher bracket of the previous tax regime. And we were able then to negotiate successfully for this sector and certain aspects of the insurance sector to be taxed at 5.5%. And so that is the very brief background as to how we have arrived at the 5.5%. All other corporate entities will be taxed at 9%. But then, of course, that leaves the question as to how do we understand what is a small business or an approved small business under the legislation, so that the Barbados Revenue Authority, under the umbrella of the Ministry of Finance, will be able then to make sure that those entities, those small business associations, small businesses, sorry, are taxed at 5.5% and not at the 9%. And so that's what we're going to do this morning. With me is Mr. Mara Blackman from the Small Business Development Unit, also Mr. Richard Harris, and we have from our research unit, Ms. Claudia Graham. And Ms. Blackman is going to take you through the presentation as to what is the approved small business and how do we become an approved small business. And then Mr. Harris and myself will field any necessary questions. Just before Ms. Blackman does that, however, I want to just let you know, confirm for you that this, with effect from the income tax year commencing January 1, 2024, the tax payable of a company with gross income of 2 million or less and registered as an approved small business is the 5.5%. The tax that was payable prior to January 1, 2024 remain at the previous corporate tax rates. Some of you may ask in relation to prepayments. The BRA has indicated to me that there are no changes to the prepayment dates for companies with the gross income of 2 million Barbados dollars or less. And so for the avoidance of doubt, monthly payments are not applicable to you. So monthly payments are not applicable to you. So the prepayment date, as per the BRA, if your fiscal year ends anywhere in between January and September, your first prepayment date is September 15th, and your second prepayment date is March 15th. So if your fiscal year ends anywhere between January and September, first prepayment date is September 15th, second is March 15th. If your fiscal year ends between October and December, your first prepayment date is December 15th, and your second prepayment date is March 15th. So again, if it is you end between October and December, first prepayment is December 15th, and second prepayment is March 15th. So with that having been said, Dr. Holt, I'm going to attempt to share the screen so that you can participate with us in the presentation, but I'm not even seeing the screen to be shared. So, Dr. Holder, can your team share it from your end? And Tamara then will guide us through.
Thanks. You can have Tamara proceed. We will seek to address that from our end. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Tamara, over to you while we try to sort this out.
Thank you, PS. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you heard, I'm Tamara Blackman, the Business Development Officer in the Ministry of Energy and Business. And today I'm going to delve into the approved small business status regime for you. Therefore, by the end of today's session, you should be able to define what approved small business status is, understand the eligibility criteria, describe the application process for approved small business status, learn about the incentives under the Act, and comprehend the revocation of approved small business status.
One second, Tamara, before you go any further, could you confirm that you're seeing the screen now?
We're seeing the screen, yes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Holder. Okay, Tamara.
Next slide. What is approved small business status? It is a designation provided by the minister responsible for business development under the Small Business Development Act, Cap 318C. This status is granted to eligible small businesses, allowing them to access a suite of incentives designed to enhance their operations and increase their competitiveness.
So one of the reasons for this is that, as you will know, many persons start start a small business. They do, whether it is baking, etc. And persons don't necessarily think about the need to be formalized. And from the government's perspective, we want to make sure that you understand that you can scale up and you can structure your business in such a way that you form part of the formalized national structure of businesses, so that a couple of things can happen. But we have it here summarized, not only allowing you to access incentives designed from a government perspective, but we also want to be able to work with you to enhance your product offering and also increase your competitiveness. And who knows, maybe even get you to the stage where we can hand you over to BIDC Export Barbados, so that your services or your goods are not only provided for locally, but also maybe regionally and internationally. Tamara?
Thank you. To be eligible for approved small business status, an enterprise must fulfill the following criteria. It should meet the definition of an approved business, of a small business, and it should provide significant socio-economic benefit for Barbados. So what is a small business? According to the Act, a small business is an enterprise that is incorporated under the Companies Act. It should satisfy at least two of the three following criteria. It should have at least 1 million in stated or paid up capital, should have at least not more than 2 million in annual sales, and 25 or less employees. So for example, if you had invested, let's say 2 million in stated or paid up capital, but you had less than 25 employees, and you fulfill the other criteria by having less than 2 million in annual sales, you will still qualify to be an approved small business. It should not be more than 25% owned or controlled by a company whose share capital exceeds that 1 million in stated or paid up capital that we mentioned earlier, and the annual sales should not exceed that 2 million once again. It is not controlled by a company whose share capital and annual sale exceeds that 1 million again, and the annual sales, once again, that was mentioned, which is the 2 million. And finally, it has no agreement in place with another business for the payment of fees on a continuous basis for managerial or other services to any other person where those services do not form part of the normal business operations of that enterprise.
So thank you, Tamara. So I just want to hit on something that persons have asked me, and that is whether if you register your business at Corporate Affairs, whether then that allows you to acquire the approved small business status. And Tamara would have hit it first up by wanting to just underscore it. The answer is no. You must be an incorporated entity. So you need to incorporate as a limited company under the Companies Act and not register as a registered business name under the Registration of Business Names Act. And normally, small businesses generally start out as a registered business. But when you want to graduate and take that further step, you must become incorporated. And I know one of the other questions that persons have asked me is whether you still need an attorney at law to incorporate your company, because obviously persons see that as prohibitive, especially as it relates to cost. The answer is no, that law was changed, and you do not need an attorney at law in order to incorporate your small business as a company under the Companies Act.
Okay, great. So the second half of the eligibility criteria that needs to be fulfilled is the socioeconomic benefit. And socioeconomic benefit is defined as generation of new investment or the development of products or processes. And usually when businesses commence, they have a level of investment. So that's self-explanatory. Part two, an improvement in employment production capacity through market research, technical invention, or innovation. So you have to have an improvement in employment. You're contributing to the socioeconomic benefit of Barbados by employing Barbadians, and you are either creating something new or novel. And number three, the enhancement of export potential, foreign exchange earnings or savings, or the general welfare of persons in Barbados. So to the first point, the enhancement of, excuse me, of export potential or foreign exchange earnings, your business could either save or earn foreign exchange for Barbados, and that is something that we like to see. We want to see you exporting and so on. So if your business has the potential to do either of those, that is something that we would like to know about. And finally, the welfare of persons in Barbados. Tell us how your business can assist persons in Barbados. Is it environmentally, socially, more economically? You decide. And basically that's what we refer to as socio-economic benefit. Now that we have spoken about the eligibility criteria, I'm going to take you through the application process. Under the application process, there are two forms that you can complete. Form 1, which is for businesses who have been in existence for greater than 1 year. And Form 2 is for, which is Form 1A, is for a business who has been in existence for less than 1 year. Once you fulfill the application form, you're expected to have it signed by a justice of the peace in order to declare that everything that you're stating is true and correct. On the application form, we like to find out what nationality are you. This status is open to Barbadian nationals and those of CARICOM nationality. However, if a person is, let's say, of American distinction or UK English distinction, but they are a Barbadian by citizenship, what we like to do is to have a copy of the citizenship document to confirm this, and we would allow you to benefit from the status. In addition to the application form, there are a number of supporting documents that you must submit. So in order to benefit, we'd like you to submit the certificate of incorporation, the articles of incorporation. We also like you to prepare a company profile, and this company profile should entail the background of the business, a description of the business operation. You can list the products and services that you offer. Also, we like you to give us some background into your target market, some market or promotional details, future plans for the business. And in this document, this is where you would include that socio-economic benefit.
So Tamara, before I ask you to go back through that company profile again, is there a template that we can provide to them just to show how that company profile can be structured?
We can do that,
You
sure.
can do that, okay. So just take us through that company profile again.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we want you to include a background into the business, description of your operation inclusive of the services and products that you offer, the target market, the marketing or promotional details, future plans of the business, and the socio-economic benefit that your company offers to Barbados. At this time, Mr. Harris would like to interject.
Yes. Morning, everyone. Yes, I just wanted to add, we try not to make the process burdensome for the small businesses that apply, right? One time we would just ask for a business plan, but we would have reduced that into a company profile where we would accept, if you don't have a business plan, a brief synopsis of the business. As what Tamara was sharing, you know, how the business is operating, why does it want a small business status, those kind of things. You know, we don't want to have like a template. You can write down or type why the business wants the approved small business status and what benefit it would be to Barbados and such like. So there's no like definite template that we would ask for, right? Because we come out and do a site visit and we will ask you pertinent questions when we come out. So we try to make it easier in terms of having a business plan. So company profile / business plan, but as I say, we try not to make it difficult for businesses to get this status or to make it too expensive because you will have to go and get a person to do a business plan for you and cost money and stuff like that. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Continuing on, you also need to submit certificate of clearance from BRA and NIS and copies of share certificates for each shareholder. Further to this, if the company is in existence for less than a year, you need to submit financial projections for 3 years. However, if the company was in existence for more than a year, but it is making greater than $1 million in revenue, we would like you to submit audited financial statements. However, if the company is making less than 1 million, we would accept a review engagement.
So I explained what is a review engagement, and then I want to go back to the share certificate. So go over the audited financial requirements again and the financial projections, tell us what is a review engagement, and then I want to make a statement on the share certificate.
Right, so a review engagement is simply unaudited financial statements. So as I indicated earlier, if your company is making less than 1 million, you will submit the review engagement or unaudited financial statements. If it is making greater than the 1 million, you will submit audited financial statements. And if the company was in existence for less than 1 year, you will submit financial projections for 3 years. And once you submit those financials, we encourage you to have the accountant sign and stamp them. And that's it for your application process.
All right, so let me tap back to the share certificates. Many companies in Barbados, many local companies actually do not issue share certificates. And I want to encourage you to do so, even if you are the sole shareholder of your company. Unfortunately, a lot of this is due to my profession's lack of walking you fully through the incorporation process, because one of the things that must happen when you have incorporated your company is that you must have that first incorporation meeting, even if it is that it's called an organizational meeting, even if it is that you're meeting with yourself and you're the only person there. You need to have that meeting recorded for your purposes with minutes, and you need to issue a share certificate. Make sure that you have the name of the company, and your shares would be governed by what you've structured in your articles of incorporation and other documents when you would have filed for your certificate of incorporation. I encourage people to keep it simple. And so if if it's a family business, for example, don't look to issue 100 shares or 200 shares. Keep it simple. If you're a family of 5 shares, 10 shares, whatever, but you must issue that share certificate. You can design it yourself. Microsoft Word has a whole set of templates in it. You can design it, put whatever fancy thing you want to put on it, but just make sure that you have the number. So if it is that you're deciding that you're issuing 10 shares, then you will put number 1 of 10 somewhere on the share certificate, whether it's the top right-hand corner, bottom corner, etc. Make sure that it is signed, and you keep that because it is an official document of your company. And not only that, it also forms part of your estate. And so if, for example, you are a shareholder, whether you make provisions in a will or not, the ownership of your company is actually tied to the shares of the company, and that's property that can be passed on either via will or through the laws of intestacy. So I just want to encourage you on that point. Back over to you, Tamara.
Thank you. Having discussed the eligibility criteria and the application process, we now move on to the approval process. And this process is an interministerial process. It passes through the Ministry of Energy and Business, along with the Attorney General Office, and it also goes to the Government Printer's Office as well. So upon receipt of the application and all of those documents that we spoke about earlier, the officers in the ministry, we process the application. As you heard earlier, we conduct a site visit to look at the operations of the company. We prepare a well-developed analysis based on that company profile that you would have submitted and other information that we are looking for. And then we forward this to the minister, because we only make recommendation for approval, but approval is done by the minister. So we like you to sell your business to us so that we can make a really good recommendation to the minister for approval. After the minister approves, then we request an order from the Attorney General's office. And once that is prepared and everything is fair, we submit that to the government printer to be gazetted, because that statutory instrument then becomes public. And finally, you come into the office once we are done, and you pay $100 administration fee. You receive your document informing you that you are an approved small business. And similarly, we at the ministry then inform BRA and Customs that you are an approved small business so that you can benefit from the future incentives. So let's take a look at the suite of incentives that small businesses can benefit from to help improve their competitiveness.
All right, Tamara, before you go there, let me jump in and just tackle what I was going to say at the end now on the approval process. So when you look at this approval process, we have the steps laid out, but you realize then that we also have a situation, if you look at bullet point 6, where you have interministerial or intergovernment dependencies. So we need to depend on BRA. BRA has to be notified, and Customs, Excise Department, etc. And we also note that there is the whole issue of supporting documentation, and this is right now a manual process. I want to let you know that from November 15th, this process will move from being a manual process to being an electronic process. We're going to provide you with all of that information through Dr. Holder. So Dr. Holder and her team at SBA will be given the information to disseminate to you. But the BRA and the Ministry of Energy and Business, we have collaborated, especially from the point of view that BRA obviously needs to know which companies exist as an approved small business under the Small Business Act. And so therefore, that process will now be done electronically. You'll be able to submit your filings electronically. The process will be done electronically, and that would reduce the time, because it has taken, in some instances, quite some time to compile everything, to review, and then to forward it up the chain on file from the Small Business Development Unit to the PS, then from the PS over to the minister. And so we want to cut out all of that and go completely electronic. I want to let you know that that system that the BRA has developed will be a temporary system. And the reason for that is that we want to further subsume this process into the ministry's overall digital revamp. But because we know that we need to ensure that you are in the BRA system as an approved small business to benefit, then we're going to go this route with this temporary digital system. And when the time comes to switch over, you wouldn't even know if there's anything that you have to do. We will do all of the work on the back end. And so we will send that information to Dr. Holder and the team, and that will be disseminated to you.
Continuing on, the suite of incentives include payment of corporation tax at a rate of 5.5% on the profits of the business, as we heard earlier. Exemptions from import duty on raw materials, plant, and equipment. And this simply means that if you want to import any items to be used in your business that qualify as raw materials, plant, and equipment, this approved small business would allow you to do that through the Customs and Excise Department. Exemptions from withholding tax on dividends. Then we have exemptions from payment of stamp duty and a deduction of corporation tax at a rate of 20% of actual expenses incurred in respect of technology, market research, or any other activity that is, in the opinion of the Revenue Commissioner, directly related to the development of the business. So we spoke about eligibility. We now need to consider the circumstances under which a business would not be eligible for the incentives. And simply put, the first one is that if you do not meet the eligibility criteria that we discussed earlier with being a small business, the definition of a small business, or the socio-economic benefit that you offer to Barbados, then this would stop you from benefiting from the incentives. And the second one is, we just spoke about the incentive where you get the exemptions from raw materials, plant, and equipment. And this act states that if you are acquiring revenue from rental of anything in your business that is related to plant and equipment, that you would not be allowed to benefit from the incentive relative to the exemption from, you will not be able to benefit from the exemption related to plant and equipment from the Customs and Excise Department. So I'm going to repeat that once more. If a company's revenue is being generated through rental of its plant and equipment, this is a circumstance under which you would not benefit for the incentive that is tied to the exemption from import duty or raw material and plant and equipment. So you would be eligible for the status. You can benefit from the 5.5%, the withholding tax, and all the other incentives, but you would not be able to benefit from the exemption on duty on plant and equipment. Let us discuss the reasons why approved small business status could be revoked. The minister may cause for the officers such as myself to come out and inspect and monitor the books, records, and accounts, just to ensure that you're still an approved small business. So annually, we do site visits. Site visits are conducted, and we ensure that you are keeping up with your statutory obligations, along with making sure that the company still has less than 25 employees. And if there's any other information as cited in number 2, if we request any other information to facilitate that inspection, we would request it. And finally, we come to the reasons why approved small business status would be revoked. So there are a number of reasons why approved small business status could be revoked. And if it is discovered at any time that the information that you have furnished to us at this application stage was false, that is a reason. Secondly, if the small business fails or refuses to submit information to the minister, or interferes with or prevents an inspection or the submission of information required. So we just heard that there's a monitoring and inspection phase, and when the officers come out to ensure that you're compliant, if we encounter any issues, that is a reason. But we have good small business owners, and usually we don't encounter these problems. Thirdly, failure on the part of the approved small business to submit income tax returns or pay NIS contributions. That is also a reason for the status to be revoked, because we love you and we encourage you to keep up with your statutory obligations. And if it is found, that the approved small business has not commenced within 6 months of having been declared an approved business, this is another reason, but usually most of the businesses that apply for the status normally all have commenced. Number 5, if the approved small business has ceased operation, an operation could be ceased due to illness of an owner. Perhaps there's no continuity that can go on with the business. Maybe the owner would have died and the operations had to cease. Those are some reasons that usually we may conduct revocation for. And finally, the business is no longer classified as a small business under the Act. And we discussed earlier once again that we have to continue to fulfill that eligibility criteria in order to be classified as an approved small business under the Act. And this brings me to the end of the presentation. So we look forward to receiving all of your application forms with well-written company profiles and all of the supporting documentation, because PS would have alluded to the approval process, but also that application process with the supporting documents is one of our big bugbears, because that is where a lot of the small businesses don't submit the relevant supporting documents on time. And we have to be playing ping pong. We're back and forth. And sometimes they think that the approval of the status takes long, but this is because all of the relevant documents were not submitted. So I hope that everyone has documented the relevant supporting documents so that we can have everything in place, that we can help you attain the approved small business status. Thank you, and over to you, PS.
All right, thank you, Tamara. Dr. Holder, how do we want to deal with the questions?
All right, well, thank you very much, PS, and to your team as well for the presentation, and thanks members for staying on the call with us throughout the session. We're seeing your questions posted in the chat, lots of commentary throughout the discussion. We thank you very much for that. We're going to turn our attention now to some of these questions and comments. Let me also thank members Don Williams and Kathy Daniel for jumping in and addressing some of the queries, some of the concerns raised by some participants. Thank you so much. PS, we have a few moments for the Q&A segment, and there are some questions here being posed. There's some, ironic enough, that have been answered along the way. So we thank you for that. But if we go to the chat feature, remember, colleagues, those of you who may have joined late, that the session today is recorded. So in the event that you miss any aspect, you will be able to go back to the YouTube channel of the association as well as our website after, and you can watch the presentation at your leisure and pleasure. So fear not, as I said at the beginning, if you joined late or if you missed any aspect of it. And so PS, we're also trying to get a link of the forms that we can maybe post in the chat as well, so that persons who want to download those application forms, that they can do so while they're on the platform. So that's the team to please get those links for us that we can post as well while we are here. So PS, if you look to the chat, you'll see that there are several questions, there are several comments that have been made. Persons who are seeking clarification on a number of the points made throughout the presentation. So you can let me know if you're able to review some of these. For example, Joan Underwood is asking, would capacity building and leadership development programming be considered an example of enhancing productivity and thereby meet the eligibility criteria? That's a question from Joan Underwood that you or a colleague from your team can attempt to address for us as we get into this segment of the webinar.
No problem. Thank you, Dr. Holder. It is a shortened session for questions, and I do have another meeting to attend to. But what we can do is that the questions that are not answered here, if we can have them compiled, and the ministry then would then send you the answers so that you can have them distributed. We can send those answers by Friday, so that this does not drag out and you have those answers. That having been said, let's deal with them as quickly as we can. Team, you heard the question in relation to Joan.
Can she repeat?
Joan Underwood is asking, would capacity building and leadership development programming be considered an example of enhancing productivity and thereby meet the eligibility criteria? I believe this question was posted when you were talking about what business or what type of activity is eligible for consideration. And so we have a couple of questions on the eligibility criteria where members want to be clear what constitute an eligible business activity.
Let me answer that question, PS.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Any business that is incorporated can become an approved small business. So if you're teaching, if you're mining, agriculture, we do not discriminate. Whether products or services, any company could benefit. So if you're doing capacity building and leadership programming, that is eligible to become an approved small business. Any company.
Okay. All right. And we also note some points were made about the financial
audits, yeah,
being provided, and we had several questions here actually on this. And I know Dawn is a member of ICAB and she sought to clarify 1 or 2 points. But the question around audited statements versus reviews, could you expound on that some more? Because I'm seeing a few questions seeking clarity on this. Audited statements versus reviews being done by a practicing accountant.
Well, there was a further part that was added to that, Dr. Holder, where the accounting distinction between reviews and compilations was also made, as I see here. So team, the review is, as you know, less involved and cheaper than audit. Is it the review that you will accept, or is it a compilation of the financial statements for those entities that are earning $1 million and less?
Well, based on the act, the review would be accepted if the company is earning less than 1 million in revenue. However, if it is greater than 1 million, the act states that we need the audited financial statements.
So for those then under 1 million, it's a review and not a compilation.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That definitely is some good news for some of our colleagues on the call. I know PS and Tamara, you may not have the screen open up with the PowerPoint, but there was I believe in your first slide, the point being made, and I'll call it out for you. It relates to the Small Business Act. And someone wanted clarification on bullet 5. I'll read it out. It says, a business that is considered, yes, compliant with the act has no agreement for the payment of fees on a continuing basis for managerial or other services to any person where those services do not form part of the normal business operations of the enterprise. So this was actually bullet 5 on that slide, which I took note of. And we have persons asking you to, if you could expand a little further on that 5th bullet.
Mr. Harris is going to take that question.
Yes, no, sometimes you could encounter businesses that you have to be careful in your due diligence, right? Because if you don't be careful, some businesses might trick you. And you will give them approved status, although they might not be compliant. So when we do our checks, one of the things in the act talk about a business not having any managerial fees to another business. No, if I'm a large business and I am going to get PS to run a little thing for me and pretend that he's a small business, then every year PS is giving me some money in my hand because he want to satisfy the requirements. He hasn't done nothing in the business for me. He just passing money to me. So we try to be careful as to who is being registered under these Small Business Act. And if you don't be careful, people will actually trick you. And then you have a big business pretending to be a small business and getting fees, although they're doing nothing, no transactions, nothing. They're getting fees on the side and you don't notice it. So the act is saying you can't do that. That's one of the requirements of that will actually permit you from getting the status. The pretense of a big business pretending to be a small business. So there are ways that people do that. So you
Okay, well,
cannot
I
have
hope that those
any
encounters
transaction.
have been few and far between.
I have not, but everything has to be done by justice of peace. Signed by justice of peace.
Right.
To confirm that. And there are penalties if you do that, right? Because you could be charged $3,000 if you're convicted or jail time or both.
Okay. It is interesting, PS, that Mr. Harris mentioned the justices of the peace, because there's a comment here. Yeah, there's a comment here where person are asking why JPs and not maybe attorneys at law and chartered accountants, members of parliament, and so on. Could they not be considered instead of the JP?
What I would say is that when the legislation was done, obviously that was a policy position at the time. If it is that we have a representation coming from the small business community to expand that list, I don't think that they will remove JPs from it, especially since government would have just taken the step to increase the pool of JPs available in the island. But if it is that we want to have additional qualified persons being able to verify the signature and vote for the status of the individuals, that is something that I can put to the minister to see whether it could be considered as an amendment to the policy position.
Right. Okay, we appreciate that.
But that will have to be, let me say, that will have to come from a pretty wide representative of the small business community and not from one or two or three individuals, just to be extremely clear.
Right.
Because you're talking about a change of.
We've had PS 200 odd persons on this call, so I think that could be considered what,
Well, once they agree, I only saw Shaw here put the comment.
Right, okay.
So we can't use that as fodder to say that all 200 agree. So, but on a serious note, Dr. Holder, take a poll, and if it comes back overwhelmingly that persons will want that increased, then it is something that we can put forward and see whether there'll be a change in policy on that.
Okay, so maybe one or two more before we wrap up. Don, who is an accountant registered with ICAP, is asking, what if the company applying is an accountant? Can they compile their own financials, or they need someone independent?
I would say no. I don't think the act speaks to that directly,
No,
right? But obviously, we have to be able to exercise good governance, and I think that would be a little bit of a challenge if we were to allow persons to be able to verify their own information. But let me discuss that with the team and send you an email on that. But personally, as PS, and I'm done, I'm not here knocking your integrity at all. This has nothing to do with you, but this is looking generally at the principle of the situation. It would be a little bit of a challenge. That is like me as an attorney verifying myself on the passport application form. That's not allowed. I have to get somebody else to do it. So.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
guess the one question that nearly all persons will have on their mind, how long does this process take? The process to become an approved small business, how long does it take?
I will let Richard answer you in terms of the length of time. I want to say this though, that we personally think that it can take too long. And there are reasons for that on both sides. There are reasons on our side in terms of the paper base that I would have spoken about before, that we're moving to get rid of that. And then there are reasons on the other side where the application might be deficient, the team may have to go back and get additional information, etc. And we reckon, and that's one of the reasons why we agreed willingly to do this, because if we get more information out there as to what is required, that will reduce the errors on applicants' side, thereby reduce the time between our office and them. And if on our side, we get the digital process right and working, then that would reduce the time on our side. So I really would want to say that come November 15th, we really want an application in order. We really want to get that approval back within a matter of a couple of days, 4 days. Once the application is in order, if the application is not in order, then that's a different scenario altogether, right? But Richard, right now, roughly how long does it take?
Yeah, thanks, PS. With my calculations, PS, this process should take about 3 months. 3 months, as long as the application is complete, right? So if you send an application, does not have a national insurance certificate, we got a call, ask the person to submit that. And then the national insurance will have to do their thing, and you might get back that in a month. So that'll make it 4 months. Because you have to wait on the other agencies. Now when we process the information once it is fully there, then we have to send it to the CPC, the Chief Parliamentary Council, right? So we have no control over how long that they may take, because they might be busy doing other things too, see? And when it come back, we vet it and we send it back to get the order sorted out. Then it have to go to the Attorney General certificate so that it could be gazetted, and the minister has to sign it. And then we have to gazette it in the Gazette. And, so the process is like 3 months because it's into ministry.
Now, the reason why I say we're going to cut that down is because the digital platform allows for all of those players to be able to sign in right at their desk, right? So it's not that when it comes from the Small Business Development Unit up to us and the minister, we hit approve, and then it reverts back to paper-based. All of the agencies that are involved, once it moves from us, it will move seamlessly from us to them, and they will be able to approve from their desk. The longest part then will be the gazetting after that. So I will want to say that from us, once it is in order from us, the approval from us, we should be able to approve that within a matter of days, as I indicated, and then it then moves through the channels. So this obviously now has to be tested, because this is new ground that we're breaking, and therefore we have to be able then to see exactly how it works. Obviously, we want to make sure we have time frames that are reasonable in place for each particular entity, and then we'll be able to circle back to you, Dr. Holder, so that we can tell you this is our charter and this is what you can expect from start to finish.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing a lot of commentary in the chat, PS, on that requirement for the audit. The statutory requirement, I believe, is 4 million. So I'm seeing quite a bit of commentary here. I was reading a few moments ago. So persons are saying that maybe you need to revisit that because the statutory requirement is 4 million for an audit.
Right, but the statutory requirement for the 4 million for an audit relates to companies under the Companies Act, and not companies that have been given the small business approved status under the Small Business Act. So they're actually two separate things.
Okay, that clarification is good. And we've gone ahead and we've placed contact information there for Richard Harris, Tamara Blackman. We've done that. The ministry and it's incumbent batch and all that, because people are asking for contact information, who to follow up with and who to call, who to send an email to, et cetera, et cetera. So we've gone right ahead and placed some contact information, as well as we've placed there a link to the actual forms, and we're asking persons that you can go right ahead, download the forms and keep it, you know, save it on your system that you can follow up a little later on with your application. But we're out of time for our webinar today. And I just want to give the PS the final word to give any closing comments that he may have before we wind up our session today.
Just two things. One, thank you, Dr. Holder, for facilitating this session. I really pray that it's not the last, because we need to keep the engagement going with the ministry and yourself and the small business community. When the time comes, I would like to circle back with you as it relates to Business Barbados and the role that Business Barbados will also play in offering certain services to our small business community. Also, as it relates to the financial literacy program from the community perspective. In fact, if you look at the back page of today's Nation, top right-hand corner, you will see a link with a webinar as it relates to financial matters that will be coming on shortly. And so I want to encourage the members to do that. And then I also want to encourage the members to keep their own engagement going, send the questions, make the calls. Appreciate that there may be instances where we might not be able to get back to you immediately, but please don't think that you're being ignored. You can feel free to follow up. The team there is a small team, but they're doing the best that they can. And I want to encourage you to just let's keep the engagement going and see how we can build out this sector in partnership with trust loans, etc. There's much that can be done to broaden the base of our MSME sector. So thank you.
Okay, so thank you to colleagues. We've been hearing from the Permanent Secretary acting in the Ministry of Energy and Business, Mr. Kevin Hunte, along with members of his team in the small business unit in the ministry, as we've been discussing what is an approved small business and helping you to understand the application process, the criteria for applying, et cetera, et cetera. All this, colleagues, today has been a part of this month's webinar. As you know, this is a part of our information session series brought to you on a monthly basis right here on our Zoom platform. And again, if you've missed any aspect of it, the session has been recorded and will be made available very soon as after we've done our editing, of course, on our various platforms. So please go to the chat section now if you've not done so yet. Click on that link and give us your feedback. Very short survey there, just a few questions on today's session. We want to hear from you because we want to know that, you know, you benefited from our conversation, our discussion today, and any improvements that you may recommend for the future. So please click on the link now and complete that very short survey for us. So we thank our team from the ministry. We thank you too, members of the SBA, as well as partners and friends, for being with us today, Tuesday, the 29th of October, for this month's webinar. We'll see you on the next occasion as we continue our educational series. So God bless you all. Have a good day and bye-bye for now. See you on the next occasion.